It is Wednesday, my dudes, and of course you know what that means. It is time once again to revisit Velocity Lake. And my goodness, what episode are we even on now? Episode 46? My goodness, it's been one heck of a journey. We still have a big amount of journeying left to go, but the area we're going to be working on over this episode and the next episode is this thing that I'm kind of showing off with the in-game camera just here, and it's this awkward patch of land right at the back of the park. You may remember many moons ago when we built the monorail that I said I was going to put another station at the back of the park. Well, I guess I did build a station platform at the back of the park, and that would be how guests kind of get to and from the park entrance and the park hotel. And that's kind of what we're going to be doing in this episode. We're going to be building the actual, rest of the station. And in the next episode, we're going to build the hotel. And here is a little plan I came up with. Sometimes when I'm not quite sure how I want a building to look or what kind of shape I want it to take, I kind of make a very rough, bare bones sort of skeleton outline using the temple pieces just to get a rough shape, because I'm thinking like, okay, if it looks like this, then this is how it will look on the general skyline of the park. This is how it will stand out. Okay, I don't like it. I saved myself 10 hours of building before I realised I don't like it. So that's sometimes something I do for the more sort of grandiose buildings I build in Planet Coaster, is I just plan out how it's going to look in very basic terms first before I actually go and commit to the amount of time required to build the full building. So I was thinking of presenting this in a couple of different ways. One of the ways was have one episode, as in this is the way I've done it. So you have one episode where we build the train station, and then the next episode we build the hotel. I did think about making it one giant episode, but then it would be like an hour long, and I think the hour-long episodes they're not very good. I know you guys have said that you like the hour-long episodes, but I think you probably are in a vocal minority. I think an hour of just me building and rambling around in Planet Coaster, it would get pretty tiring, I think, if that was the norm. So I decided to kind of split it into two episodes. So I think this episode is going to be just about 15 minutes long, and then the next episode will be longer. I'm trying to mention it because it's all still edited as one giant episode of my Vegas timeline, so I can just basically do the entire thing in one go to keep all of the topics focused and relevant, and I don't repeat myself, as I've said many times, ironically. So I'm trying to just subtract the 15 minutes from whatever. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's going to be two episodes. So this episode is going to be the station, and we've started out by constructing a little foundation for the building that will sit on top of it. I wasn't at this point in the actual build whilst I was doing this. I didn't really have an idea of how I wanted it to be. Like, I know I said I planned out the shape of the building and the general appearance of the layout, but I didn't know what kind of architectural style it would be following. Like, are we going to go for a name to, like, a brutalist sort of architectural style, or maybe a much more modern, all glass and panels design, or do we go, like, themed? Like we have, like, a jungle cabin themed building or something. So it was all that would not fit with Velocity Lake. It wouldn't be that. But you know what I mean? I was trying to think of how the general aesthetic, and in the end I went for a generic theme and quite a cheap theme. Like, imagine this is my experience with hotels in the UK and Europe. I guess it might be different in America, where I appreciate a lot of you live, but over here in Bing Bong Land, there are these like cheap hotels, like you got Holiday Inn, you got Premier Inn, you got Travel Lodge. Admittedly, they're not always cheap options necessarily. Like the EasyJet hotel is the one that comes to mind that's like a super cheap hotel. But regardless, they're like these modern buildings, and they're like very, very like prefabricated. Everything is just paneled up. The actual panel pieces in Planet Coaster's building material roster look very, very similar to how these buildings generally look. I mean, obviously you've got exceptions, especially ones that are in the middle of cities where the buildings are all very old. Obviously it doesn't apply to them, but the ones that are built near airports or train stations, they're generally these very ugly, cheap prefab buildings. And that's what I wanted to get at. I don't know why. I'm going off on how ugly these buildings are, and it's going to segue into me saying, and that's what I decided to emulate with this building here. I think it's because, I don't know, I wanted the actual focus of this part of the park, and it's not really part of the park, is it? But I wanted this part of the park to mainly be focused on the actual hotel. Like, I wanted, the story I had, I guess, was that we spent most of the budget on the hotel. Like, this whole complex has a budget. we didn't do a very good job budgeting, and we spent most of that on the hotel. There were issues with the hotel's construction as well. I don't know, there was a volcano erupted next to it, and that pushed back building, as it were, things like that. So we ended up with not much money to spend on the station. And that was always going to be, priority number 2 in terms of how do you prioritize the construction of the hotel and the station. Probably you want to prioritize the hotel. So the station didn't get as much love with the architects, didn't get as much budget allocated to it. So as a consequence, it's a much more cheapo prefab affair than the actual hotel's construction. That's, I guess, is kind of why I did it. And also because I've just noticed that the actual prefab appearance of these buildings, there's probably an actual name for this architectural style, but I don't know, and I don't do research prior to these videos. There probably is an actual name for it, but I'm going to keep calling it a prefab building, and someone in the comments can probably correct me if I am indeed incorrect. But no, I've seen these buildings, and I was looking at them, I was like, you know what? Planet Coaster's panel pieces, I very rarely use them, but they do look very, very similar to how these hotels look. So maybe that was always their intended purpose, or, to use those pieces to make buildings like that. I don't know. But I guess I wanted to kind of see if I was right. Like, if I did use those pieces and follow a similar color scheme, do I just end up with a clone of a generic-looking travel lodge building? I don't know if I succeeded, but that's another thing. So basically, this building is going to be very horrible, and a lot of it is not final. Specifically, the actual not the entrance to the station, as in like the actual on-ride entrance that comes with Planet Coaster rides, those little white bollards. I mean the actual doorway into the building itself. I didn't put a doorway in, like it's just windows that could just be served. You could pretend there's a glass sliding door hidden within that system, because I wasn't at this point entirely certain what the general aesthetic of the hotel was, and I didn't know if the hotel I would end up designing a custom door for that I could just copy across to the train station. So a lot of this is not final. Again, I didn't want to commit to any kind of specific theme to the architecture of this station because I wanted it all to be focused on the hotel. So I tried to keep this thing as minimalist as possible, as kind of bare as possible, but also, look fairly modern and believable as a building. So that's what I hope somewhere in the last 7 minutes or so of commentary that I've said something that resembles a cohesive thesis statement as to the actual architectural style of this building. You could see me fencing off the ride operator just there. They can now live a lifetime of isolation inside that sealed off chamber. That was all I had to say about that. Sorry, ride operator. I know you had a family, but this is for the best. We've got to maintain a realistic aesthetic for Velocity Lake. Just know that you died honouring the theme park industry of Lowne Aerospace. I thought I'd break up, moving on, I thought I'd break up the grey monotony of this building thus far with a nice blue fence. Don't worry, it's not just going to be entirely a big blocky shade of grey, the actual building, just the lower floor. And we're going to be having lots of glass windows and stuff. I guess there's going to be some offices for operating the monorail system, because it is a monorail system. We've got the red line, we've got the blue line. The blue line is what connects the hotel to the station. It connects the hotel station to the main entrance station, and then you've got the red line that connects the outside world to the theme park, because Velocity Lake's car park is quite small when you compare it to an actual theme park's car park, like your Disneylands, etc., etc. So one of the ways I try and, I guess using Disney is quite a good example, because this is what Disney do as well, is let's just pretend that there's another off-site car park that you can't see in the game, or like some sort of central hub where guests can stay, and it's like a big resort, and then there are little monorail trains that go off to the theme parks in the area. I know Disney in Orlando have that. They have a monorail system connecting their parks. Similar thing here. So guests can pay a premium to park in the small but on-site car park and have a nice short walk into the entrance, or they can save money, park in the cheaper car park miles away, and then get the monorail into the park. That's kind of that's how I designed the monorail system, and that's what I did with Neptune Park as well. But I do like to think that Velocity Lake is a big improvement on the monorail system that Neptune Park employed. So that's the red line, and this is the blue line. So I'm not sure why I spent so much time talking about the red line, especially because I probably talked about it a lot in the actual episode where I built the main monorail hub. But then again, how long ago was that? I'm trying to think what in my life was even happening when I built that station. It was so long ago. I know Caravan Palace's album had just come out. In fact, I don't think it had. The Chronologic album. I really liked that album. That was one of the defining albums, for me at least, of 2019. And I think it hadn't even come out. Plume had come out. they released one song from the album called Plume, which is actually probably my favourite song from the album, incidentally. Aside from that. So I just remember listening to that, just building the monorail, and that was so long ago. That was my point. It was such a long time ago. So maybe this is kind of justified me quickly going over the monorail system again. I feel like I haven't talked about the building of the... I feel like just looking at the screen and realising the building is pretty much done. I feel like I haven't talked about it too much, but I feel like I did describe it, and I did describe the thought process behind its design, and ultimately, the design itself is fairly basic. You can kind of it's just a big block, basically. So I don't really have much to add in terms of what I already said, but you can kind of see I've got the, it's not very good. It's like the actual, the wing, or the part of the building that sticks out where the entrance is to the building. That sentence probably could have done with a rework, but we're going to push on regardless. It's just like 2 openings. I'm just going to fill them in with those generic windows and call it a day, because it's a pretty boring building. I'm getting bored just looking at it, to be honest. And I was getting pretty bored building it as well. Like, I was like, oh, I just want to build the hotel. This is so dull. I don't know. I was kind of hit with I didn't really have a burst of inspiration like I did for the main monorail station building, which of course is much more architecturally impressive. Like, it's that big lattice of metal and glass. I really, really like how that came out, but I feel like that's meant to be the main hub station. It's like, English railway, for example. Your big cities have the very grandiose stations. Look at London, St Pancras, or where Leeds has got a pretty impressive station. Then you got places like where I live in Plymouth, where it's just a concrete courtyard basically, and that's it, and an abandoned building above it. That's not even a lie. I think it's abandoned anyway. It's certainly derelict. I think they're planning on knocking it down. Anyway, we don't need to be talking about this in this video. So, I feel like you got the main hub monorail station. That's meant to be the wow factor. Then you got this one, which is meant to be purely functional and just provides a service. And it's not meant to have any kind of flair of its own, if that makes sense. It's just here to be a thing. And it's only just sort of blend into the background. You're not really meant to pay that much attention to it. Is another sort of reason why I kind of went for this boring prefab modern cheapo style. Insert any other synonym for terrible in that sentence. You can see quickly I've got those 2 entrances there. One's for the disabled access, and one is just the staircase into it. Just because I always like to make sure that we've got adequate disabled access throughout the park. And here I'm adding, I didn't really know what to do with the top of this little tower, so I decided to add a blue square to represent the fact it is the blue line. I tried adding some text to it, but it didn't look very good. I don't think I do it now, like in this part of the video, but in a second I will be offsetting a clock face into it, so it does actually have a purpose. It's going to be a clock face. But here you can just see me adding a little sunshade to the initial entrance to the station. Now again, I must stress this is all very much, this part here at least, is all temporary. I didn't want to put that much effort into it because I wanted to see how the hotel ended up turning out, so I could actually better connect the 2 buildings together. You can see terraforming around the train to make sure it didn't just clip through the ground. If the hotel's entrance ended up being slightly more offset, we'd probably need to rebuild that little wing that contains the entrance and exit to the train station. So I thought, let's just leave it as bare and simple as we can, but also, perfectly adequate, that it could be, you could call it a completed building, just because I don't want to waste time on something that's ultimately gets knocked down. But that's it. And what a note to end on there. We got the station is all built up there, and I think it's a pretty boring building. It's not anything that special, but I think it serves it's there to serve a purpose, and I think it serves it pretty well. I've just noticed that it's missing a fence, isn't it, on the other platform? I didn't even notice that I'd forgotten to build that. I've literally just noticed it now. On that second platform. Oops. Well, there we are. There you have it, folks. A weird way to end a weird old episode. I can assure you the hotel building is much more inspired than this one. Again, this just had to be I just needed a functional train station building, and I feel like the episode would have been too long if this was just tacked on to the hotel build. So, it's its own thing, but I hope you guys enjoyed the build nonetheless. And hey, this is an example, I guess, of how the panel pieces can be used in Planet Coaster. Anyway, on screen there are links to things. The left-hand side is a link to the Full Velocity Lake playlist. The right-hand side is a video chosen for you by YouTube's recommendation algorithm. I'm running out of time. In the description you'll find Twitter, Discord, Instagram, merchandise, all the good stuff. Guys, thanks so much for watching. It turns out I had a bit more time than I thought. So, bye.